Welcome to this lecture about the essentials of the MOOC energy demand in buildings. In this lecture, you will learn how to estimate energy demand for space heating and cooling by making an energy balance on the heat flows in buildings. What are the thermal processes responsible for the energy demand for space heating and cooling? Because we want to determine how much heating and cooling we need, we do not need to consider any heating or cooling system in the building. We just look at the construction and the people inside, and based on that, we can estimate how much heating and cooling is needed to maintain nice indoor conditions. Basically, there are four main energy transfer processes responsible for heat flowing in and out a building. The first one consists of the energy flows through the building envelope. What we call the building envelope is in fact the construction, facade walls, floor, roof, windows. We call these flows transmission heat flows, and they arise simply because of temperature differences between indoor and outdoor. They have nothing to do with air flows. It is just heat being transported from warm to cold. The second one is about the energy coming with air flows from outside. We call them ventilation and infiltration flows. The third one relates to the sun. When the sun shines, the building gains energy through solar radiation. And the fourth and last one is about internal heat gains by people and appliances inside the building. We are going to make a balance of these four transfer processes in order to find out if the air in the building needs heat or cold to be at a nice temperature. We can make an energy balance because of the first law of thermodynamics, which is the law of conservation of energy. It states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, it can only be converted from one form to the other. In other words, it is conserved. So, for a system like the air in a building that we want to keep at a nice constant temperature, the first law states that all energy coming into the system is equal to all energy coming out of the system plus the energy stored inside the system. Energy in equals energy stored plus energy out. For quick and simple estimations, we can make a simplification and consider that during the time period studied, the energy stored in the building construction is negligible. This stored energy is, for instance, solar radiation that accumulates slowly in the walls and is also slowly released to the indoor air. We will just assume that there is no heat storage by the construction and that all energy that flows in also flows out. So, in the end, energy coming in, E in, equals E out. We can then make the energy balance by summing up all four energy amounts transferred to and out of the building. We have seen that it is transmission, ventilation and infiltration, solar heat gains and internal heat gains. There are three cases. First, if the balance is zero, the system is balanced. There is as much energy flowing into the building as leaving the building, so no heating or cooling is needed. The desired indoor temperature is naturally achieved. In temperate cold countries, this would happen mainly in summer, while in warmer countries this could happen in spring or autumn. Let's take the example of a building with indoor temperature 20 degrees Celsius and take a certain day in the year where the transmission energy is minus 1000 kilowatt-hour. Ventilation and infiltration is minus 1125. Solar gains are 1204 and internal heat gains are 921 kilowatt-hour. Energy coming in is counted positive and energy flowing out is counted as negative. So, the energy in consists of the solar gains and internal heat gains and amounts, therefore, 1204 plus 921 equals 2125 kilowatt hour. The energy out consists of transmission and ventilation and infiltration and amounts minus 2125 kilowatt hour. There is therefore perfectly in balance and no heating or cooling is needed to maintain the building at 20 degrees Celsius. Second, if the balance is negative, this means that more energy leaves the building than it comes in. There is therefore a deficit in heat that can be compensated only by two ways. Don't forget that the law of energy conservation has to be satisfied. The first way is to accept a decrease of the indoor temperature, which will automatically reduce the energy losses and restore the balance. As an example, if in winter you accept a temperature of 5 degrees inside your house while it is 5 degrees outdoor, there are no heat losses to the outdoor. If you don't want this temperature decrease, you need to add energy to the system. That is, you need to add as much heat as needed to bring the balance to zero. That is what we call the energy demand for heating. Let's take again the example of the building with indoor temperature 20 degrees Celsius and take another day in the year where the transmission energy is minus 2000 kilowatt hour. Ventilation and infiltration is minus 1500 kilowatt hour and solar gains are 500 and internal heat gains are 921 kilowatt hour. The energy in consists of the solar gains and internal heat gains and amounts therefore 1421 kilowatt hour. The energy out consists of transmission and ventilation and infiltration and amounts minus 3500 kilowatt hour. If we make the sum of them, we see an unbalance of 2079 kilowatt hour that must be compensated by bringing an additional 2079 kilowatt hour heat in the building. The heating demand is said to be 2079 kilowatt hour. If the balance is positive, this means that more energy comes in the building than it leaves. There is therefore a surplus of heat that can be compensated only by two ways, again because of the law of energy conservation. The first way is to accept an increase of the indoor temperature, which will automatically increase the energy losses and restore this way the balance. As an example, if in summer you accept a temperature of 40 degrees inside your house while it is 40 outdoor, there will be no heat losses. If you don't want this temperature increase, you need to remove energy from the system. That is, you need to apply as much cooling as needed to bring the balance to zero. That is what we call the energy demand for cooling. Please be aware here that applying cooling means in fact removing energy. Let's take again the example of a building with indoor temperature 20 degrees Celsius and take a warm day in the year where the transmission energy is 800 kilowatt hour. Ventilation and infiltration are 850. Solar gains are 1204 and internal heat gains are 921 kilowatt hour. So, the energy in consists of the solar gains, internal heat gains, and also of the transmission and ventilation and infiltration, as these are positive. It amounts therefore 3775 kilowatt hour. There is no energy out and there is therefore an unbalance of 3775 kilowatt hour that must be compensated by removing this 775 kilowatt hour heat out of the building. The cooling demand is said to be minus 3775 kilowatt hour. Mostly we will say that the cooling demand is plus 3775 kilowatt hour. But you know that cooling is removing heat and should be counted negative. So when people say 3775 kilowatt hour cooling, they mean in fact minus 3775. In the former example, we talked about energy amounts in kilowatt hour. Later in this course, we will also talk about energy flows in kilowatt. An energy balance is always made in kilowatt hour, while energy flows will be described in kilowatt as energy rates, which is the quantity of energy flowing during a unit time. There is another lecture where this is explained in more details. Be also aware that we will always use SI units or units derived from them, so the temperature will be in Kelvin or degree Celsius. In this lecture, you have learned on which principles estimations of the energy needed to heat and cool buildings are based. You will learn more details in a second lecture. Thank you for your attention.